Back, everybody, to Sportsline. We switch and talk some NFL and go to the NHL. The season, we think, is going to start in early August. That means the Predators will be back in action. They'll play a qualifying mini-series against the Arizona Coyotes. And as we look to get hockey back, as the chase for the Stanley Cup is about to resume. Going to be weird having meaningful hockey games in August and September, but such is the world we live in. Joining us now, friend of show, covers the Predators for NHL.com. He's been on this show a lot. We love having him. The great Robbie Stanley. King Robbie joins us. Your Majesty, welcome back to the Wednesday extravaganza, sir.
JB, it's an honor to be here once again. And what are these sports that you speak of? What are those?
You and I were joking during the break. I mean, what a summer it's been with COVID-19, and usually we're talking about the NHL draft at this time, and getting ready as the players kind of take their hiatus and get ready to come back in training camp in September. It's been a crazy year. But before we get into all that, how are you doing, my friend? How are things with you? You healthy? You good?
Healthy, all good. Thankful for that. JB, hope you and everybody watching and listening is healthy as well. I know it's a crazy time that we've been in, but hopefully we're going to continue to power through this thing and get through it together.
All right, the Predators slowly making their way back with training camp set to begin on Monday, correct? As they get ready to kind of get things back into gear. Where are they at from a health standpoint? It seems like all systems appear to be go. No reports of any Preds players that I've heard of or seen, or any coaches dealing with COVID. Where are the Predators at from a health standpoint?
As far as I know, they are completely healthy. So I know the NHL at times have tried to be a little bit hush-hush about the testing going on, and they came out with something last week that maybe you don't know specifically what's going to happen in terms of if a player tests positive. They're probably not going to tell you exactly who it was or exactly what the reasoning is unless the team or that player gives the go-ahead to do so. But as far as everybody can tell, I think the Predators are completely healthy. They're ready to go for training camp that starts next Monday, like you mentioned there, JB. And going to be really interesting to see and kind of hear about what happens. It's obviously a situation that none of us have ever dealt with before, but we'll see how this Predators team responds to it as they head into their qualifying series against the Arizona Coyotes starting August 1st.
Now, from a player standpoint, Robbie, I mean, I know these guys have started to slowly get back on the ice. Do you think, what would it be, 3 weeks to get them up to speed before they get back to game action? Do you think that's enough time to get these guys, back on the ice and back to where they're in their normal late, mid to late season groove, if you will?
JB, honestly, I think it's going to take some time. I really do, and that's not just for the Predators. I think it's going to take some time for everyone. And look, you got to think, I mean, some of these guys literally didn't start skating until last week.
Wow.
And they hadn't skated since March, since the last time they played in an NHL game. So, you go through a typical offseason. If you're a normal player, let's say you get eliminated in April, you probably don't set foot on the ice again until, mid-June. But even then, that's 2 months. You're talking since March. It's been a long time since a lot of these players have set foot on the ice. I don't think it's going to take them forever to get back, but I do think, when you're trying to rush through things in a 3-week training camp, you're back, and all of a sudden you're playing for all the marbles in the Predators case. You're going right into a qualifying series, and then hopefully if you win that series, right into the Stanley Cup playoffs. I wouldn't expect it from a league-wide standpoint at first to look as smooth and as crisp in terms of playoff hockey as we're normally accustomed to seeing. Now, the flip side of that is, everybody theoretically should be pretty healthy for the most part coming into this. So, I'm interested to see whether it's like the NFL, and sometimes in training camp, you see some of those soft tissue injuries creep up. Might see that a little bit with some groins and things going on when you're doing these battle drills in training camp. But other than that, I think most teams are going to be pretty healthy heading into this. So that part of it could prove to be really exciting as you head into this playoff push.
Robbie Stanley is our guest from NHL.com, covers the Predators, friend of show. Robbie, obviously, just like the MLS, just like the NBA, we're going to be dealing with a bubble situation for the NHL teams once they get back and up to speed and to playing. And we've seen some setbacks, with MLS, with NBA, guys getting sick or guys coming down with COVID once they get into the bubble. What do you think the concern level would be or is for the Predators and the rest of the league, given what's gone on in these other bubble situations in terms of player health?
Well, I think it should be high. I mean, there's no question about that, JB. I mean, even locally, we're kind of dealing with that right now with Nashville SC and the things they have going on down in Orlando with the MLS. Now, the good thing that the NHL has working for it is their locations in Edmonton and Toronto. Once you get there, they don't have anywhere near as many cases as we have here in the United States. I mean, for instance, Edmonton, nobody really goes around in Edmonton anyway, much less in a pandemic. So you're not going to be dealing with a whole lot of cases in Edmonton, Alberta.
So what you're telling me is there's not a lot of cool honky-tonk bars in Edmonton and downtown to hang out in?
The great Terry Crisp once explained Edmonton to me like this. He told me that you could watch your dog run away from you for 3 consecutive days. That's how flat it is, and that's how, nothing is there. So if you've never been to Edmonton, that's what it's like. Apparently, you can just watch things leave you for 3 days. So don't have to really worry about a whole lot of COVID cases once you get there. I think the concern, if you're the NHL, is making sure that you keep that bubble tight while they're still here in their local towns in training camp before they make those trips out to Toronto and to Edmonton. Once they get there, you get everybody wrapped up, assuming, of course, everybody follows the rules once they're inside that bubble. I think then you feel pretty good about your situation. These next 2 or 3 weeks, if I'm the NHL, that would be the time that really concerns me.
Yeah, no question about it, Robbie, as we anticipate the return of NHL hockey. And it's so interesting because I really thought the Preds were an interesting case study once the league was paused because, they had kind of a roller coaster year, but it looked like they were starting to pick things up. John Hines had been in place for a little while. Looked like he was starting to implement his season. Obviously, Roman Josi was having an incredible year. And it looked like, and I know we've talked about this before, it looked like there could have been the changing of the guard at goaltender with UC Saros becoming the #1 and Pekka being the steady veteran there to look over the young guy's shoulder and step in when needed. Now that things have been stopped and they're starting up again, how confident are you that the Preds can kind of pick up that momentum that they had when the season was paused?
Well, I'm not sure about the picking up the momentum part just because it's been so long, but I will say this. Look, JB, you and I have talked about this a ton here on Sportsline.
Yep.
It's been a rough year for those top 4 guys offensively. Forsberg was picking it up towards the end, and he was starting to play better. But Johansson, Duchesne, Arvidsson were not playing anywhere near the level that we had grown accustomed to and that we expected for them to play. I think this break could be really good for those 4 guys in particular, because I don't know about you, JB, it's hard for me to imagine that once they come back and they get back into the groove of things, that all 4 of those guys are going to be as bad and as inconsistent as they were all season long. It's just it's not like they just forgot how to play hockey. At some point, their talent is going to pick back up. So I think that part of it could actually be pretty good for the Predators, and they may end up being better for it if they get all 4 of those guys rolling at the same time, because quite honestly, that's not something they've had all season long. There has been no point all regular season long where all 4 of those players were playing well at the same time. And as we know, JB, those are the 4 guys outside of Roman Josi who really drive that team offensively. So, I've seen all these models trying to, kind of predict and project where these teams are going to go based off how they were playing before the pause. To me, I kind of just tossed that out the window. This is such a unique situation that I think you're basically starting from scratch here.
We're talking to the King, Robbie Stanley from NHL.com, who, of course, covers the Preds. How about Roman Josi? I mean, this guy was having an incredible year before the season was paused. Where would you rank the kind of season he's had or he was having with some of the better offensive defensemen that you've seen in the NHL?
Well, I can tell you this. It's by far the best season I've ever seen a Predators defenseman have.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. I mean, they've had PK Subban and Joe Weber and Ryan Suter. I mean, they've had a lot of really good defensemen play for them And I think Roman Josi just blew everybody else out of the water. It kind of reminded me, honestly, of peak Erik Karlsson. Back when Karlsson was playing for the Ottawa Senators, and he was basically just a one-man wrecking crew, single-handedly carried them to the Eastern Conference Final the same year the Predators went to the Stanley Cup Final. Remember, they were just one game away in double overtime from playing the Predators in the Stanley Cup Final. It kind of reminded me of a peak Erik Karlsson type of season, even though I think Roman Josi is much better on the defensive side of things than Erik Karlsson has ever been. So he was outstanding this year. If you ask me, I know people listening might say, well, of course you think this. You live in Nashville. You cover the Nashville Predators.
Right.
I think he is the runaway Norris Trophy winner. If you dig deep into the numbers and you're comparing him and John Carlson of the Washington Capitals, yes, Carlson has more points. He also plays with Alex Ovechkin, so it's pretty easy to just pass the puck to that guy. But every other statistical category, Roman Josi wins. And look, I think that's got to count for something. It's too long in the NHL. It's been, hey, who has the most points by a defenseman? Let's give you the Norris Trophy. That's not what the award's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about the best all-around defenseman, and I think Roman Josi has been that this year.
Yeah, it's kind of like the AL and NL Cy Young Awards, right? Usually the guy with the most wins would get it, but we've seen Jacob deGrom with like an under 500 record and a great ERA win it, so absolutely. All right, so it's Preds Coyotes qualifying round, best of 5. How do you think the Preds and Coyotes match up as we get ready to see this mini-series?
Well, this, for the past couple of years, has really been a difficult matchup for the Predators, but it's been a difficult matchup for the Predators, particularly in Arizona when they've been on the road. Well, you don't really have to worry about that this time around. It's kind of a neutral site. That nobody really is going to have home ice advantage, basically. I mean, there's not going to be any fans in the stands. So that part of it kind of gets taken out to me. So I like the Predators in this matchup. I would not be surprised at all if it goes 5 games. I think they're pretty even for the most part. Arizona was really coming on in terms of their puck possession, but Arizona, even though they have Taylor Hall and they have Phil Kessel, they were really struggling to score during the past couple weeks before the season paused. So if those two guys don't pick it up, specifically Kessel and Taylor Hall, I think the Predators should be the heavy favorites in this series, but I would expect Kessel and Hall to play better than they have coming off of this break and being rested and fresh and ready to go. So I'm going to take the Predators in 5 games, but I think it's going to be a really hard-fought series.
All right, Robbie, let's say for the moment there was no pandemic, there was no NHL pause. Who do you think would have been the #1 goaltender for the Preds heading into the playoffs, assuming that they made it and they were in the final spot when the season was paused? I know I ask you about goaltenders all the time, but do you think Saros was working his way to be the #1? And I guess to piggyback on that, who do you think Hines will go with as his #1 goaltender coming up against the Coyotes?
Well, Davey, I'll be honest with you. I think had the season not paused and it continued to go the direction in which it was going, I don't know how you don't start UC Saros.
I agree.
In game 1 of the playoffs. I mean, he was outstanding. And you look at his numbers, he was one of the best goaltenders in the entire league for the last month or so of the season before it got paused. So I absolutely think he would have started in goal. Now it's a little bit trickier. I mean, you're coming back. If Pecorine is playing like the Pecorine of old, I think he's got to be your guy. Experience means something, especially once you get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. I still think coming into camp, based off the way he played, Saros is probably going to get the first crack at it, at least in training camp. But I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, this could be exactly the opportunity that Pecorine was looking for to kind of pause, reset. He'd be the first one to tell you he did not have the season that he expected to have. Maybe this can be a really good time for him to reset and refocus and come back and win that starting job.
Robbie, it's so great to have you back on the Wednesday Extravaganza, just to hear your voice. Get your plugs in, my man.
You can follow me on Twitter at @RStanleyNHL. Once things get cranked back up here in the next week or so, my Locked On Predators podcast will be returning. And as always, you can find me on NHL.com as well. And here on this fine program on Sportsline with my man, JB.
King Robbie Stanley, the best in the biz. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Stay safe, my man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you as always.
All right. There he goes. The great Robbie Stanley talking NHL and Preds. Time for another break. We got more coming up on the other side. Stay with us.